Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again as we continue our Justice for Aaron Brady campaign. Now, most of you will be aware we've just finished a sequence of short videos which we've released, which have shown clearly that the fictional gang created by An Garda Síochána and the DPP, and in relation to Aaron Brady, it's a fictional gang. It simply does not exist. So at this moment in time, there are 4 men and 1 woman, at least, who are walking free, the people who committed the modern robbery at Lordship Credit Union. So we've covered how the authorities in Garda Síochána and the DPP created this fictional gang and portrayed it very slyly in a lot of ways, and indeed sometimes, as I've mentioned before, somewhat sickeningly on the floor of the court. And we have also shown, if we take from the site and the scene and the modern robbery, how evidence has been airbrushed in, evidence has been airbrushed out, and there has been a story, again created and fabricated, to create a narrative that simply does not exist. And we see very clearly, and we have shown very clearly, that the mainstream media have been used as a tool by the authorities to create this false narrative. And I suppose that was very evident at the very beginning of the primetime programme that was released immediately after Aaron's conviction, where senior investigative journalist Mr. Owen Reynolds says at the very start of the programme that the crime only took 58 seconds, the raiders was in and out, and there was no possibility of forensic evidence. That's a lie, Mr. Reynolds. And you're fully aware of that. There was evidence and information, very vital evidence and vital information left at the scene of the murder and robbery. So again, we've covered all that in the previous videos. So it's just showing that relationship between the mainstream media and An Garda Síochána. We then moved and we had we scrutinised the storyboard that was created at the burn site and the absolute ludicrous times and the scandalous way in which the CCTV footage and the times were manipulated by the DPP and Garda Síochána and the expert who was brought in from England, who worked in conjunction with Garda Kenna and intelligence analyst Mr. McGooey, to create a totally fictional story that simply holds no water. The times are totally crazy, I suppose is the best way to describe it. And it proves that what we have said all along, that the vehicle burned deep in South Armagh is not the vehicle that was used at the modern robbery at Lordship Credit Union. We then moved on quickly to the theft of this vehicle that was allegedly used in the modern robbery on the Friday night. It was stolen in Clogherhead 2 nights previously. And again, we have shown with beyond any reasonable doubt that the CCTV footage and the timings, some are impossible, some are completely ludicrous, some just make absolutely no sense. There is no continuity to the story at all when it is scrutinised. And we showed clearly that that's a fictional story too, a false narrative created to link that theft with Aaron and his friends. And that was to create the whole narrative of a story that simply does not exist. So we've covered those aspects, the gang, the murder scene, the burn site and the site of the robbery of the car in Clogherhead. And all that evidence at best was circumstantial, which drew inference. And we have shown clearly that the circumstantial evidence used, which is weak at the best of times in any criminal case, that circumstantial evidence was tampered with, it was manufactured, it was curated, and it was a complete false narrative. So any inference drawn from that evidence simply carries no water, and it leaves Aaron Brady's conviction a massive miscarriage of justice. So that's one part of the story. Obviously, we have covered it in some detail, the witnesses from America, Molly Staunton and Daniel Cahill. And we're going to start now to look into how the stories in America were manufactured and brought back here to Ireland. and how that narrative was carefully created. And we have to ask the question, how did Homeland Security get involved in all this? Questionable involvement. Why was there evidence not disclosed? Definitely, without any shadow of a doubt, we've shown questionable statements, immigration issues and criminal records of people who give statements against Aaron. And I want to look at particularly the relationship between these two men who it looks very much like are the authors of this farcical and fictional story. And it's these two men here, you can see it's Mr. Pat Murray, Senior Investigating Officer, who was the initial officer who took charge of the investigation into the modern robbery at Clogherhead Credit Union. And the gentleman beside him on his right is Homeland Security Agent Mr. Agent Katske. And it can be somewhat complicated, this story. So we have to see how these people came forward, why these people came forward, and how we are saying there was a foundation created, again using the media, to give some succour and let's say soften the path for those who are willing to purge themselves, tell lies to protect themselves and give false statements against Aaron. So the first thing I'm just going to pop up onto the screen here is a poster that was up in New York, and you can see it there. The poster reads $100,000 reward for info on suspect in the Irish cop killing who lived in the Bronx. So even the initial headlines on the poster is telling us that this gentleman lived in the Bronx. Obviously Aaron's not named in the poster, but at the very top of the poster, I'm just going to pop it up again, and I will cut and paste and I'll put it up there in front. You can see 100,000 reward for info on Irish cop killer in the Bronx /irishcentral.com. So there's absolutely no ambiguity whatsoever in that statement. They're saying that the killer of Garda Adrian Donahue lived in the Bronx. And there's a second part of this document that was published in the Irish Central, and it goes into great detail. The suspect in the brutal slaying, 26-year-old native of Crossmaglen, travelled to New York, British passport, lived in Yonkers until he was apprehended by customs enforcement, ICE agents on May the 18th of this year. So these posters and looking for information, strangely enough, only were put up after Aaron was arrested, and his arrest had been fairly well documented in and around Yonkers and indeed in and around New York. And to show again how the foundations was laid, I'll just show you some here very carefully. There we go. Very carefully done on Monday the 6th of August 2016. Now this is 8 months before Aaron was arrested and deported for immigration issues. Okay, Garda killer set to become a dad. And there's actually, you can see quite clearly a picture of Aaron in Times Square. That's 2016. August, this is October 2016. Adrian mother suspect celebrates new baby. So we have the announcement of the pregnancy and we have the birth. And then we have, I'm just going to show you here again. Yes, this is from Mr. Toole again, crime correspondent. And US cops bust man who shot Adrian, and that's from May 2017. So there's no ambiguity left there at all. It's quite clear what these people have done. And you will see how these newspapers, or we go along this video, we'll see how these headlines were used to persuade people to give false statement against Aaron. So basically what we are saying exactly is this. On Garda Síochána, and members of Homeland Security showed these newspaper headlines, and there's dozens of them, there's any amount of them, these are only some we have. And they showed these newspaper clippings to potential, targets they had picked out. people with immigration status issues, people with criminal records who did not want to be sent back to Ireland. And in order to do this, obviously, An Garda Síochána were prepped for it, but they needed help. And that's when we go back to our friend, Homeland Security Agent, Mr. Agent Katske, who you will see has his fingerprints all over each and every one of these individual people we're going to look at. So the base was, they were able to show these headlines to the people and say, listen, Aaron Brady done this. All you have to do to stay here in this country so you don't go home and you won't be arrested, you won't be put in jail for drugs offences, is tell us that Aaron Brady said he shot a cop. So that's the basis we are starting from. And I suppose the first one we're going to look at is, now some of these people didn't come to court because when they see how well scrutinised Daniel Cahill was in relation to his involvement with certain gangs in Dublin before he left for New York, when they realised that when he made a slip up telling us about Homeland Security calling to his apartment looking for Dean Evans 2 years prior, all of this happening obviously while he was illegal. So we have to look now at each individual one, and the first we're going to look at is Matt, and I'm just going to show you a very brief clip from that video where Matt actually tells us they made him look at the newspapers. Here we go, here's the short clip.
Yeah, to say, I just signed it.
No, because what I'm saying is, well, what did they do? Write out what they wanted you to say?
No, they didn't. No, have me write out. They would put the tape, before they put the tape on, they would tell me everything that was going on, and that actually had me go to read an article in the newspaper that was back in your place, in Ireland, yeah.
I believe that's quite clear and very straightforward. This gentleman here, whose statement was in the original Book of Evidence, but he was never called. He wasn't even mentioned during the course of Aaron's trial. The prosecution never mentioned him or said that or created any date to bring him forward. Now, this man was arrested for drugs offences, both illegal narcotics and illegal prescription drugs. And you can see quite clearly he was showing the newspapers. So he's showing the picture of Aaron and US cops bust man who shot Adrian. So that is what we're showing here. And we know from the extended highlights of the extended part of that clip, the whole clip, he mentions Agent Katske also as being part of the team who called to his house and arrested him. And another thing here we just have to remember once again, that on national television, the senior investigating officer says this.
The word spread. Irish cops were in town. Witnesses were found who had crucial evidence in the case.
There was approximately 5 persons who came forward with information in where they stated that Aaron Brady had mentioned he was the one who shot the guard.
We'll be showing this clip again during the course of this video, where Mr. Murray says these people came forward. The man in the previous video did not come forward. He was approached and put under duress, and he, for making a statement, he got away with very serious drugs offences in Boston. So that's one clip. The next thing we're going to look at here, now I'm just going to bring you up a clip slide we have done previously, and we'll just have a quick look at that. And this is in relation to a gentleman called Rowe. We have Rowe's slide up on the screen, and you see a number of issues there was with Rowe. And obviously one of them there was arrested and detained by Katske and Wade. That's 2 Homeland Security officers. And obviously Mr. Katske's involved there once again. And we have done an extensive video on that, and that can be found in our archives if anyone wants to go back and have a look at more detail on that. But now what I want to bring up, just to follow the thread that we're working on here, and text from Rowe to his cousin. They arrested me at my job in front of a whole bar full of people. I lost my job. They held me handcuffed with 7 cars of police, told me I was going home. I'll never see my wife and child again, on some bullshit about an attack on a gentleman here in Ireland. Case that was fake paper, kept me handcuffed to the side of the cell, busted into my house with no warrant to search it, made an example of me over here, took my interview for my 10-year green card. That after that, because I told them when I got the lawyer, I want my statement taken off this. It was a forced fake statement. The guard basically wrote it himself. And so for that, they took my file from immigration because I wouldn't help them with the AB case. I was trying to expose them. So once again, we can see that the mantra portrayed by or eulogized by Mr. Murray once again. We'll just listen to it quickly.
The word spread. Irish cops were in town. Witnesses were found who had crucial evidence in the case.
There was approximately 5 persons who came forward with information in where they stated that Aaron Brady had mentioned he was the one who shot the guard. And
Senior Investigating Officer Mr. Pat Murray is saying very clearly 5 people came forward. This man didn't come forward either because we popped the text up again, the first line of it. They arrested me at my job in front of a whole bar full of people. I lost my job. They held me handcuffed with 7 cars of police, told me I was going home, I'd never see my wife and child again. So if we see Mr. Murray sitting at the side of a lake, nice and relaxed, and then we listen to the actual truth, we can see the chasm of what you, the Irish people, are being told and what the Irish media are prepared to peddle for the authorities. So it's as simple as that. So, and bringing back now from Mr. Murray to his associate, Homeland Security Agent, Mr. Agent Katske, I'm just going to pop up 2 more little texts here from Roe to his cousin again. And no, the text on the left, no, I mean like you could come back whenever you felt like it, legally. Yeah, how does that work? I can set up for a meeting with a friend of mine in America or Ireland. You can hear what he has to say and then decide. And then if we go to the second text on the right, yeah, let me know, my boy works for the Homeland. He got my sister 10-year visa and she was banned. She was banned. She's coming back out here in March. Give it to you, no bother. When you home? I'm going home in a few months, flat out here at the minute. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine and he has a lot of power. Now, when we go into those texts, Matt is actually mentioned. And there's a telephone number and the number's on the HLS, Homeland Security. So here we have again Mr. Katske allowing people to be coerced, bullied, and he is facilitating collusion to generate false statements. So that's Mr. Katske and Mr. Murray seem to be at it again. So the next case we're going to have a very, very quick look at, I know we've covered this in a lot of detail, is Mr. Cahill. As we have highlighted on numerous occasions before, we have a number of serious issues with Daniel Cahill and his involvement and him coming forward to give false statements and lies against Aaron, which we have highlighted previously in the past. But in this case, we're just going to look very briefly at 2 aspects of Mr. Cahill, his interaction with Agent Katske, and I also just want to very quickly, you can see on the slide there that Daniel Cahill was hiding in the attic for 6 hours. And once again, I'm going to show you just this little clip from the primetime programme.
The word spread. Irish cops were in town. Witnesses were found who had crucial evidence in the case.
There was approximately 5 persons who came forward with information in where they stated that Aaron Brady had mentioned he was the one who shot the guard.
So no matter what the stretch of the imagination is there, 5 people came forward, Murray says there. This man was hiding in an attic for 6 hours. Is that the actions of a man who came forward? It most certainly is not. But that highlights that little issue. But what we want to do is, in this video, is bring Matt Katske's involvement into it here. And during the course of Daniel Cahill's testimony, when he was allowed to give testimony from New York to a court in Dublin, from the Homeland Security Office, that's where he gave his evidence from. And he told us during the course of his testimony that day when he fell out of the attic and he was detained and taken to an NYPD precinct. He had interactions with Katske and Wade, Homeland Security officers. And some of the interactions with those two officers were as simple as this. Katske and Wade told Mr. Cahill that he would have to get his paperwork in order fairly quickly in order for him to stay in New York. Now, Mr. Cahill told or spun a story about his paperwork being in and half processed, and bottom line was, when Daniel Cahill was taken down or fell down out of the attic after 6 hours on top of NYPD officers and immigration removal officers, he should have been deported. He was an illegal immigrant. And the only reason he stayed in New York is because he gave false statement against our son, Aaron Brady. It's as simple as that. And the catalyst here and the person who allowed this to happen and presided over it on behalf of the American authorities appears to be Special Agent Matt Katske. Chris is the next gentleman we're going to have a look at. Another man who gave a statement against Aaron, a statement which we have several issues with, and we have clearly stated on occasions before that Chris has told a litany of lies to save his own skin and to stay in the United States of America because he's an illegal immigrant. So Mr. Katske's involvement here is during the course of Chris giving his statement to detectives Ogle and Mary, the cameraman, the man doing the filming, was Agent Katske. And we have covered this previously, but Agent Katske witnessed and he seen what Mary and Ogle done that day during the identification process. Now, we have made the authorities here in Ireland aware of the actions of Ogle and Mary that day. So very simply what happened, Chris was in the room with Ogle and Mary. He gave a statement full of lies. We say, you're a liar, Chris. And the video switched off and then it switched back on, and Pat Mary and Bobby Ogle pushed an A4 sheet of paper in front of Chris. And Chris says, yes, that's Aaron Brady. That's the man who stood beside me in a bar 3 years ago. I never seen him before. I haven't seen him since. And I was drinking for 36 hours, for most of the 36 hours prior to meeting him. Chris is a clever fella, isn't he? Now, as I say, we have made representation to the authorities here in Ireland in relation to that identification process. But we have a Homeland Security officer filming this and accepting that what these two men from Ireland are doing. So again, Katske's fingerprints is all over another blatant attempt by the authorities to falsify statements and testimony against Aaron Brady. It's as simple as that. Katske is at it again. He's orchestrating it. He's the cameraman this time. Katske then moves from being a cameraman to facilitating the Irish authority in arresting and detaining other people for questioning. And again, we're moving away completely here from the mantra of Pat Mary, people came forward. People were arrested and detained and put under pressure. So I'm just going to give you two very brief examples that people we have spoken to and we know their story and what happened to them. A young girl in Boston was arrested outside Dunkin' Donuts in Boston by the authorities. And under the protection of Matt Katske, that young girl was allowed to be questioned by an Irish detective on her own in a cell without any proper recording or proper details being taken down. That girl was suggested to her that she had heard her boyfriend, her then boyfriend, talk about the murder and robbery at Clogherhead Credit Union. which she never did. She never heard him say anything. She refused to tell lies. That girl was deported. We have a second young man in Boston, a young man who had his own business. He had people working for him, very much involved in the GAA in Boston. He was arrested and detained. He was being questioned by the Irish detectives over in Boston. And it was put plainly to him, tell us that you overheard these people saying something. It would have been suspect A or suspect Y. And say you heard these people saying something and you can stay here. And I have spoken to this young man, and he was close to actually doing it to save himself, because he told me himself he was aware of this paperwork, what I had told you about before. He was aware of all this. So the groundwork had been done and it was mentioned to him. But he didn't do it, and yes, guess what happened to this man? He was deported. And we have paperwork that says clearly in an affidavit that was sent in by our solicitors that an email between the authorities in Dublin and Ireland, if they cooperate, keep them. If they don't cooperate, deport them. Initiate deportation proceedings. And again, Mr. Katske is involved in all of these incidents. And it simply can't be coincidence. And we have to highlight how the coercion and collusion was steered over with Homeland Security. And again, we have to ask, why would Homeland Security do this? And I think the same applies here. The Irish media give the template for An Garda Síochána to bring to America and say, we have a cop killer here in America, we want him deported. And I believe that's why Mr. Katske went along with the facade and the charade and the attempts at corruption and collusion and coercion people to make statements that were simply untrue, false, they were lies. Now, the final thing we're going to have a quick look at in relation to Mr. Katske, and the most serious, is his meeting with suspect A and his then girlfriend, his now wife, suspect A's girlfriend, in Belfast International Airport. And I'm just going to bring up onto the screen now a report by Owen Reynolds, investigative reporter, and he's detailing what some of what happened in Belfast Airport. And there we have the headline from the Sunday World Online article, and you can see it's Garda murderer, killer Aaron Brady lodges appeal against conviction on 46 grounds. And this article has been generated by investigative journalists Owen Reynolds and Alison O'Riordan. And we're going to run through some of the text in this article. And the first text box up there just details that Aaron's going to appeal on 46 grounds, according to the newspaper here, and details a little bit about the murder and robbery and the details of the Aaron sentence. So in the second text box here, we're just going to look at the second paragraph. One of the most important grounds of the 46 is likely to be a decision by the trial judge, Mr. Justice Michael White, to refuse to allow the defence to call evidence regarding what he saw as possible witness inducement by Homeland Security in America. The controversy arose after Gardaí disclosed thousands of files to Brady ahead of his trial. Among the files, Brady's lawyers discovered a recording of a conversation between Special Agent Matt Katske and Brady's best friend. Now, we're not 100% sure whether that was actually disclosed to Aaron's defence team. Obviously, Aaron's friend had a copy of the said recording, and it came through his legal team. But that's nitpicking as such, but it's a point to make. And who was also suspect A in the Lordship robbery. Special Agent Katske works for Homeland Security, and at the time of the recording in July 2017, he was attached to the British Embassy. So the Gardaí were still building their case against Brady, with members of the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation regularly travelling to New York, hoping to speak to people who had information that might help to finger Brady as the gunman. Katske travelled to Belfast to intercept suspect A. So again, just to interject there, he was going to intercept him. So it's a very careful use of words. I don't know, and we still to this day don't know where the orders to intercept came from. But you can see there, Agent Katske travelled to Belfast Airport to intercept suspect A. Suspect A covertly recorded the conversation and later sent a digital copy of the recording to Agent Katske, who in turn sent the recording to his senior officer here in Ireland, who happened to be, and just put up that third box, investigation Pat Murray, now retired but a detective inspector at the time. Now it's very important to note here, when suspect A sent the recording to Agent Katske then sent it to Pat Murray. Allegedly, Pat Murray did not know. Pat Murray said under oath, and here he is again, Mr. Murray with Agent Katske, and Mr. Murray said under oath he had no knowledge of the trip Agent Katske took to intercept suspect A at Belfast Airport. So that's another twist to the story. So the recording was muffled and often difficult to understand, but Brady's senior barrister, Mr. Michael O'Hagan, said there was evidence on it that Agent Katske was offering to help suspect A's brother in return for information about Brady. And again, I know it was muffled and often difficult to hear, but it has been fully transcribed. And I think 99% of what was said was recorded and is transcribed onto documents. So there's no issue with any ambiguity in relation to what Mr. Katske was saying. The next box says, suspect A's brother was living in the US and had fallen foul of immigration authorities. So again, we have an issue here. This happened in 2017, and suspect A's brother, who at one time was also a suspect, I think we called him suspect Y in some of the other, in our previous videos, because we said suspect Y because Y was a suspect. There was evidence to prove he wasn't in the car park. So this is 2017. Mr. Katske is aware that he has some form of issue with his immigration status, and suspect A's brother is still in the United States of America. 5 years later, so he's still in America without any intervention from Mr. Katske or the immigration in America. So his immigration status mustn't have been that precarious in 2017 when Mr. Katske decided to intercept suspect A. Among the snippets of conversation could be heard was Katske saying, he's been removed, he's going home, I can find plenty wrong with his paperwork. So obviously Mr. Katske was threatening and using coercion and corruption here. He said he could find plenty wrong with his paperwork, and I've just told you, suspect A's brother is still in the United States of America. And without going into too much detail, we are aware of his immigration status, and again, it is a paperwork exercise, and that's why the young man is still in America and still working in America. So Mr. Katske was applying pressure and actually telling lies in relation to what was happening to suspect A's brother. Among the snippets of, he could also be heard saying, if he puts Aaron Brady away, you will probably never hear from me again. I can't do anything for him until he commits to doing something for us in this case. So I don't think it can be any more straightforward than this. And we go back to the start of the article where Justice Michael White decided this wasn't applicable or was collateral to Aaron's case. So this is what we've had to deal with, and I have to say at this time and ongoing in the case, Judge Michael White became aware of all the other actions. One of the other incidents I've mentioned with the other people in this video this evening, Judge Michael White was aware of all those and more, because he withheld emails between London and Dublin and America. We haven't seen all those yet. Those have been withheld from Aaron's defence. So Judge Michael White, I say, is in possession of even more information in relation to Katske's exploits when he went to intercept people. So move on now to the next box. Mr. O'Higgins argued that this was clear evidence of Homeland Security offering something in return for information on Brady. I don't think we can in any way question that statement from Mr. O'Higgins, but obviously Judge Michael White did. He also pointed out to an internal Homeland Security email that was disclosed, which stated that another potential witness should be sent home if he didn't provide a statement to Gardaí about Brady. Now, we have covered that in our previous videos and indeed in this video. If they cooperate, keep them. If they don't cooperate, initiate deportation proceedings. So that is the way Agent Katske was operating in conjunction with Pat Marry. Mr. O'Higgins wanted to introduce to the jury to show that one of the key state witnesses in the trial, Daniel Cahill, may have been subject to similar inducements and threats by Homeland Security. And here we have confirmation from what we have said all along, and it was documented in court. Cahill was living as an undocumented visa overstayer in New York at the time and gave a statement to Gardaí at Yonkers Police Department after being taken from his home by members of Homeland Security. So we have to assume that Judge Michael White could not see any correlation between Daniel Cahill, whether he fell out of the attic or was taken out of the attic after 6 hours, spoken to by Agent Katske. He gives a statement against Aaron Brady, and Judge Michael White can't correlate that with the previous actions with a number of other individuals in America. It beggars belief that it happened, but this happened in the court in the Irish judicial system. Both Cahill and Special Agent Mary Ann Wade denied that the threats were made or inducements offered. Mr. O'Higgins said that the evidence of inducements relating to other potential witnesses might undermine Mr. Cahill's credibility on that issue. And again, I think everyone would have to agree with Mr. O'Higgins here. Agent Katske's actions with other people, and we know he was heavily involved with Daniel Cahill, because Daniel Cahill referred to himself, Matt and Marianne, very personal terms during the course of his testimony. So Daniel Cahill had a very, very cosy relationship, shall we say, with these special agents. Next text box. However, Mr. Justice White ruled that the jury should not hear the covert recording or be told of the alleged inducements of other witnesses. In his judgment, he said that the issue of whether Cahill was offered an inducement was a collateral one, and therefore evidence could not be called in relation to it. So this is only collateral evidence. We have a special agent running around rogue, as it was described in court, offering people inducements, putting them under pressure. And we know we were dealing with people, as we said before, with immigration status issues and criminal records. Serious criminal records, and indeed extradition warrants were made disappear. And Judge Michael White determines that this is collateral information. I know it's unbelievable. It happened in Irish court, in the Irish judicial system. It is a long-standing principle in Irish law that issues that are not directly related to the central issue in the trial are characterised as collateral and cannot be allowed to derail the process by causing it to become unfeasibly long and drawn out. So time was an issue for Mr. Justice White, and he was cutting short the ability of Aaron's defence to put forward a very, very, very valid argument that there was serious corruption and collusion. The possibility of it was staring Judge White in the face. And if we see there the last line of the second paragraph, the issue of inducement may not have been collateral to the prosecution case, but Brady's lawyers said it was central to the defence case. And I think that's quite fair to say when we've shown you what's happened with extradition warrants, criminal records disappearing, people being allowed to stay in America who had criminal records, serious immigration issues. So Judge Michael White abandoned all that. And obviously, and more importantly, what we're speaking about here in relation to this Sunday World article is the tape of an agent, a Homeland Security agent offering people who are suspects in the modern robbery, offering them immunity. Just give us Brady. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's disgusting what went on. And Judge Michael White presided over this. The final paragraph there on that text box, another issue likely to form grounds of appeal was the evidence of Molly Staunton. And Miss Staunton was initially expected to travel from New York to come to Dublin. She gave evidence, but the plan was scrapped when COVID-19 swept through New York. And obviously, Miss Staunton gave her evidence. We know what happened there. A man came in, slammed her laptop down in her kitchen in New York, told her no more evidence, tell them what you're fucking supposed to tell them. And Judge Michael White allowed that to go on too. Agent Katske was also very much involved with Molly Staunton. Agent Katske and Agent Wade were mentioned during Molly Staunton's testimony. So again, we have Katske's fingerprints all over. Very dubious carry on. This is the box number 8. This is the final text box in relation to Owen Reynolds' article. Towards the end of the trial, Brady's counsel, Mr. O'Higgins, complained about the evidence of Special Agent Wade, and in particular, Mr. O'Higgins criticised a letter of scope that the agent had been issued by her employers, which prevented her from talking about the immigration status of certain witnesses, including Daniel Cahill. So here you can see that this is absolutely could not have been a fair trial. We had witnesses from America, and Agent Wade was a perfect example. She refused to talk about the immigration status or the criminal records of any of those given evidence, which is absolutely ludicrous. And it shows that the American authorities worked in conjunction with Brendan Grehan and the DPP to withhold vital information against the people who give false statements, we say, against Aaron Brady. And we can see here, Mr. Higgins said the agents used the letters of scope to prevent anything that would put them in a bad light coming out. He said very much latitude has never been shown to witness in the history of the state, adding, the idea that witnesses come to court and say, here are a load of things we agree are relevant, but I'm not going to answer any questions about them. So I think that shows quite clearly Aaron Brady's trial. We've run through briefly at the beginning the scenarios created, times CCTV footage tampered with, times wrong, absolute and complete nonsense. And then we've brought forward the issue of this Homeland Security Agent, Mr. Matt Katske, in conjunction with Senior Investigating Officer, Mr. Pat Murray. And it's not there's no isolated incident here. This runs through the whole American aspect of Aaron's trial, where people were coerced, put under pressure. There's letters from lawyers saying people were put under immense duress. What more would be needed to show the carry on that went on here? So we just wanted to highlight on the actions of this agent and how we weren't allowed to even mention it. And I thank Mr. Reynolds. One thing he did do good is to publish the information in relation to Agent Katske's tape, and it allowed us to highlight, I think, events and incidents that people would feel hard to understand or believe if they actually seen it in a film on TV. So this is facts. This happened during the course of Aaron Brady's trial. So I hope it's a long video. I hope it gives an overview of everything that happened during the course of Aaron's trial and how we, the Brady family and Aaron, are asking you, please like, comment and share. Please contact people in authority. It's come to the stage now where this miscarriage of justice must be rated for everybody involved. We continue to say that for all the families involved. And I'll leave you again with the facts The facts are the people and the person who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue are not in prison. They have not been brought forward to pay for what the crime they committed in Lordship Credit Union. So please continue to like, comment and share, and please send out that contact to your local representatives and people in authority or in any political position. This miscarriage of justice must be righted, and righted sooner rather than later. Thank you.